Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a book that, well, it's really captivated the imagination of business leaders and aspiring entrepreneurs alike for decades now.
It really has.
Often called a blueprint for success, maybe a guide to thinking like a billionaire, and definitely described as a wholly absorbing look into high-stakes business. We are, of course, talking about Trump, The Art of the Deal.
A classic. In its own way.
Exactly. And look, forget the headlines, forget the public persona for a moment, because our mission today is to go beyond all that. We're taking a deep dive into the foundational chapters, starting right from the introduction, going all the way through chapter 4 too.
Yeah, the real groundwork of the book.
We want to extract the core philosophies, maybe find some surprising insights, and look at those pivotal moments that shaped this self-proclaimed billionaire's approach to business and maybe even life.
It's about unpacking the principles, isn't it? The bold moves, the stories.
Absolutely. The personal anecdotes that really illuminate what he calls the gamesmanship of deal-making, treating it like his sport. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. It's fascinating how a book from way back in 1987 still resonates so strongly, not just in business circles, right?
Yeah.
But in, broader discussions about how people build influence, project an image.
Definitely. And that initial reception, you mentioned the reviews, they really set the stage for the kind of mythology the book was aiming for.
Oh, absolutely. Phrases like wholly absorbing, fascinating, a no-holds-barred account. They were everywhere. It was positioned as this, tantalizing peek behind the curtain of a master deal maker.
Right. And it wasn't just intrigue. There was a very direct promise, almost audacious, baked right into the promotion.
Yeah, like that one review. What was it? If your goal is to make $1 million, read this book.
Exactly. Or that headline, How to Get Rich, Think Like a Billionaire. I mean, that clearly taps into a powerful aspiration, doesn't it? For financial success and, crucially, for understanding how you get there at the highest level.
It really suggested there was this hidden playbook being revealed, that the strategies weren't just unique to him, but maybe replicable, that there's a method to what looks like madness sometimes.
A method, yeah. And it's important, like you said, to acknowledge the collaborative nature of it. Trump himself thanked his family, Ivana, his kids, and Random House.
And Tony Schwartz, the co-author, his acknowledgments were extensive. He mentioned Robert Trump, the architect, Durskut, research staff like Ruth Mullen, Gail Olson.
Even Norma Forderer for running interference, and his agent Kathy Robbins as an editor, cheerleader, confidant. It really underscores that this wasn't just one guy dictating memoirs.
No, definitely not. It was a team effort, pooling insights, verifying details. It suggests a deliberate attempt to build this comprehensive, well-supported narrative, capturing a mind like that on paper, translating experience into, digestible wisdom.
Yeah.
That's complex.
For sure. Speaking of principles, Chapter 2, Trump Cards, the elements of the deal. That really lays out some core ideas. Leverage is key, right?
Oh, absolutely central. We all know leverage is power in negotiation, having something the other side wants or needs or, absolutely can't do without.
But the book adds a twist, doesn't it? It's not just having the power.
Exactly. It's about the psychological game, creating it where it might not obviously exist, convincing the other side they need something they didn't even realize they lacked.
Turning perception into real power, playing the long game.
Precisely. It elevates it beyond just a simple definition. It's perception management, strategic influence.
Wow.
But there's a crucial counterpoint in that same chapter, the need to deliver the goods.
Right. You can't con people, at least not for long. That's the quote, isn't it?
Yeah. Excitement, hyperbole. That's okay for promotion, for getting press. But ultimately, the product, the deal, it has to have substance, or the whole thing just falls apart.
That anecdote about Jimmy Carter asking for $5 million for his library seems to fit here. Trump was pretty taken aback by that.
Yeah, he didn't even answer, apparently. It seemed to highlight this disconnect, maybe, between an expectation and what could realistically be delivered, at least from his point of view. It underscores that, reputation and results eventually catch up.
You can build the hype, but you also have to build the tower, so to speak.
It's about sustainability, right?
Yeah.
You generate buzz, sure, but without substance.
Yeah.
People see through it eventually. Another core idea in that chapter is have fun.
Yes. Money isn't the main thing. It's just a way to keep score.
The real excitement, the book suggests, is in playing the game itself.
That really struck me. It's a particular philosophy of work-life balance. Or maybe work is life. He talks about not taking success too seriously, not worrying too much about the past or future.
The joys in the process, the thrill of the deal, like a sport.
So for you listening, what does that imply? If you want to adopt these ideas, it suggests you need a high tolerance for risk, maybe a deep motivation that goes beyond just the paycheck.
Yeah, it allows for a kind of detachment from the immediate financial outcome. Lets you take calculated risks, maybe endure setbacks that would paralyze someone else. The game is the reward.
Makes losses maybe less painful, wins more thrilling.
Could it? It's a mindset where the challenge itself is the payoff. So, okay, we've got this philosophy, these trump cards, but how do they actually get dealt? We need to go back right to the beginning. Chapter 3, family, early life.
His father, Fred Trump, often painted as this strong, formidable figure.
Absolutely. But with a very modest, efficient approach, focused on competence, building mostly out in Brooklyn and Queens.
That story about the bricks, preferring red over tan.
Just because it was a penny a brick cheaper. Classic Fred Trump, right? All about efficiency, practicality.
There's that scene where Fred visits the Trump Tower site in Manhattan with its expensive glass curtain wall.
And suggest, why don't you forget about the damn glass, give them 4 or 5 stories of it, and then use common brick.
Nobody's going to look up anyway. Wow. That really shows the difference, doesn't it? The contrast with the son's loftier dreams and visions, wanting to make a splash in Manhattan.
Totally. A real generational philosophical divide right there. Father grounded in cost efficiency, suburban development. Son drawn to glamour, scale, big visible projects. Interestingly, he credits some of the showmanship to his mother, Mary Trump.
Right, Mary Trump, described as having a flair for the dramatic and the grand. He mentions her being totally captivated by Queen Elizabeth's coronation.
Watching it all day, loving the pomp and circumstance, the whole idea of royalty and glamour.
Well, his father's apparently saying, for Christ's sake, Mary, enough is enough. Turn it off. They're all a bunch of con artists. Haha.
It's a great image. So you've got this blend, right? Pragmatic efficiency from the father, love of splendor from the mother. Seems like that combo really shaped his approach later on.
A unique mix of practical and theatrical. The book also gets into sibling dynamics. His older sister, Marianne Barry.
Yeah, started as a stay-at-home mom, then went back to law school, became a federal judge. Shows that inherited drive, ambition. He mentions calling her for legal advice on an Atlantic City lawsuit. Clearly shares that drive.
Then his younger sister, Elizabeth. Kinder, brighter, but maybe less ambitious. Worked at Chase Manhattan.
Right, and then there's the really quite poignant story of his older brother, Freddie.
Yeah, that's tough. Describes as the opposite of their tough father. Handsome, warm, loved life, but just didn't fit the rough and tumble real estate world.
Found happiness as a TWA pilot, but sadly succumbed to alcoholism at 43.
And the book expresses real regret about judging Freddie's choices when they were younger, admitting he was too young to see that what mattered was Freddie enjoying his own path.
It's a surprisingly reflective moment, isn't it? A glimpse of vulnerability you don't often associate with the public image. Shows the personal cost of family expectations, maybe.
Definitely. And then there's Robert, the younger brother. Quieter, more easygoing.
Yeah, but there's that anecdote about the building blocks.
Oh, right. As a kid wanting to build a tall tower, didn't have enough blocks.
Asked Robert to borrow some, then glued the whole thing together so Robert couldn't get his blocks back.
Ah. A perfect little foreshadowing of his assertive, maybe acquisitive style, right?
Yeah.
Speaks volumes about that drive to get and keep resources.
Absolutely. And that assertiveness, maybe aggression, led to military school.
Right. New York Military Academy at 13. His dad sent him there to channel aggression into achievement.
And the impact of Theodore Dobius, the tough drill sergeant, a former Marine.
Dobius didn't take any backtalk. Trump realized quickly that direct confrontation was not the way to go. Saw other kids get stomped or become nebbishes.
So he chose a third route, used his head to finesse Dobius, learned to show respect for authority, but without being intimidated. A delicate balance, he calls it.
That ability to read and adapt to powerful people, not just yield or fight, that sounds like a crucial lesson for later deals.
Invaluable, you'd imagine. It's about calculated navigation, understanding personalities, which brings us from formative years to early business lessons. Chapter 4, The Cincinnati Experience.
Swift and Village. This big housing project he bought.
Yeah, acquired for $6 million, but with only $500,000 cash down. This was during a slump in Cincinnati. Prices were low. An early example of leveraging opportunity in a distressed market.
A theme we see again and again, and the manager there, Irving, what a character.
Memorable is one word for it. Highly capable, the book says, but totally untrustworthy. known for cons, swindles.
Trump suspected it from day one, right? And the insurance agent confirmed it, trying to bond Irving. Couldn't do it, called him a con man.
Right. But the dilemma was, Irving was way more effective than any honest manager they could find, especially collecting rent from tough tenants.
The book gives examples, doesn't it? Using filthy words, threats.
Yeah, and that story about the truck driver husband ready to strangle Irving for swearing at his daughter and hitting on his wife.
But Irving, described as short, fat, bald, just verbally attacks the guy. Claims his hands are lethal weapons.
It's incredible. It paints this picture of someone who just wouldn't back down. The book uses a lion tamer analogy. You can't show fear. You stand tall, hold your ground. Very unconventional management style.
Yeah, definitely unconventional. And despite suspecting Irving stole maybe $50,000 a year extra, plus the staff's $80 funeral fund.
They kept him on because, as the book puts it, he was probably getting a bargain.
Oh, that shows a real pragmatism, doesn't it? Overlooking ethical issues for sheer effectiveness.
Seems so. But the decision to sell Swifton Village eventually came from advice from a tenant.
An older Jewish tenant, a concentration camp survivor.
Yeah, with incredible street smarts, apparently. Pulled him aside, warned him the area was going downhill fast, whispered, "Donald, sell this job." Said the neighborhood was getting really dangerous.
Chilling advice. And it influenced the decision to sell later for a big profit. Highlights the value of listening to people on the ground, right? Especially those with hard-won wisdom.
Absolutely, even when the advice is uncomfortable. Okay, so from Cincinnati, the next big move is Manhattan, Chapter 5.
A huge pivot from his dad's world in the outer boroughs. He'd wanted Manhattan since graduating Wharton in '68, but waited. Why?
Well, prices were high, and contrary to popular belief, he didn't start with a massive trust fund. His dad believed in making them work for it. Graduated with maybe $200,000 net worth, mostly tied up already.
So not unlimited capital, he needed the market to be right.
Exactly. He waited until 1971, rented his first Manhattan apartment, a studio on 3rd Avenue. Dark, dingy.
Yeah.
He called it a penthouse, jokingly.
But he says moving into that place was maybe more exciting than moving into the top of Trump Tower later. Why?
It wasn't about the luxury. It was a psychological shift, moving from being a kid from Queens who worked in Brooklyn to becoming a city guy.
Immersing himself, walking the streets, feeling the market pulse, laying the groundwork, cementing that Manhattan developer identity. And part of that was joining Le Club.
Right. The club was apparently the spot then. Hottest, most exclusive. Getting in was typical Trump style, seems like.
Called the president directly, got a meeting at 21.
Yep. Bypassing the usual channels. And it's noted he doesn't drink, which contrasted with the club president during that meeting, shows that directness, that assertiveness early on.
And the president had that weird request. I was promised not to steal older members' wives. Because he was young and good-looking.
Bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Especially when he contrasts it with his parents' long marriage. But he promised, and says it was a great move, socially and professionally. Though he found many of the single women there couldn't hold a conversation, called them phonies.
Speaks to a certain scene, maybe, but also shows he'd navigate weird social rules for strategic access. And it was at Le Club he met Roy Cohn.
Yeah, Cohn. Reputation as a guy who wasn't afraid to fight. Trump challenged him, saying lawyers delay deals, settle instead of fight.
Which Cohn, being Cohn, probably agreed with.
Right. And Trump valued Cohn's toughness and loyalty above all. Contrasted him with respectable types who lacked loyalty, who'd stab a friend in the back.
He describes Cohn as someone who'd literally stand by you to the death. Very black and white view of alliances there.
Seems so. He also notes Cohn refused to project a wimp image, sometimes associated with being gay back then. He even spoke out against gay rights. Total commitment to that tough image.
Okay, so this is all happening in the early 70s, a really tough time for New York City itself.
Yeah, the city was in crisis, teetering on bankruptcy, confidence was shot, but where others saw despair.
He saw opportunity, which leads us right into Chapter 6, the Grand Hotel deal, reviving the old Commodore Hotel on 42nd Street next to Grand Central.
Right, 1975. The Commodore was dilapidated, gloomy, dark.
Yeah.
A real symbol of the city's decline at that point.
And his vision was bold for the time. Clad the old brick in sleek, modern bronze or glass. Make it sparkle.
He credits the architect Dur Scutt with helping shape that vision. Even mentions Scutt giving him advice on furniture for his tiny studio apartment. Shows that connection with people who thought outside the box.
But he was only 27, no hotel experience. Knew he needed a partner, right?
Wisely, yes. He preferred Hyatt over Hilton or Sheraton. Why? Hyatt had that modern image. And crucially, they didn't have a flagship hotel in New York yet. He knew they wanted one badly.
Strategic thinking there, identifying a mutual need, not just quality. But the biggest hurdle was the city, right? Getting that tax abatement.
Absolutely critical. He pitched it as essential to make the project work, to save jobs. And he used the city's own dire financial state, the near bankruptcy, as his ultimate leverage.
Then Jay Pritzker from Hyatt got involved, and their participation depended on the city giving that abatement.
And they got it. A 40-year tax abatement agreement, valued at over $100 million, he says. That enabled the $100 million renovation, turning the Commodore into the Grand Hyatt. Incredible public-private deal, really, driven by a desperate city.
The hotel opened in '80, huge hit. But then came management challenges. Ivana's role.
Yeah, interesting dynamic. She wasn't officially in the chain of command, but she'd spot dust, unpressed uniforms, acted like an unofficial quality controller, caused friction with the Hyatt manager.
So Patrick Foley, head of Hyatt Hotels, came up with that clever solution.
Ingenious, really. Replaced the manager with an Eastern European guy, like Ivana, who was flexible. This new manager would involve the Trumps in tiny decisions, changing wallpaper, menu items.
Just to make them feel included so they'd back off the day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. Masterful psychological play to handle strong personalities. But even more valuable than his half ownership, he says, was that small clause.
The exclusive covenant, prohibiting Hyatt from building competing hotels in the 5 boroughs without his okay, permanently.
He tried to get it from Pritzker earlier, who refused, but he slipped it in at the closing. How?
Leveraged the bank's worries about risk. Forced Hyatt's hand while Jay Pritzker was unreachable, climbing a mountain in Nepal.
Incredible timing and opportunism. He even says he put a clause in his will about it, just in case his heirs aren't that sharp. Shows that deep understanding of long-term leverage, capitalizing on vulnerability.
Amazing. Which sets the stage perfectly for the next huge project, Trump Tower. Chapter 7, the Fifth Avenue flagship.
Right. Starts with buying the Bonwit Teller building, 57th and 5th. Unbeatable location, he calls it.
And the key to getting it built was zoning leverage again, wasn't it?
That same technique, using the as-of-right building model, something legally allowed but undesirable, to pressure the city into approving his preferred, much taller, grander design.
Presenting a worse alternative to make your ideal look like a compromise. Smart. And the Bonwit Teller deal itself? That was financial engineering, right?
Pure genius in a way. Negotiated with Thomas Macios of Allied Stores, Bonwit's new owner, leased a smaller prime spot back to Bonwit for $3 million a year.
On a site that cost him only $2.5 million a year to care.
Exactly. Instant $500,000 annual profit. He effectively owned the land for nothing, as he puts it.
Brilliant. Not just financial, but strategic, too. Gave him leverage with the city, argue they needed Bonwit to stay there.
But still, community opposition. Local board wanting a moratorium on building. A committee to ban the building boom.
Yeah, always push back on big projects, but the financial success kind of silenced them in the end.
Seems that way. Cost around $190 million total. Apartment sales alone brought in $240 million. That's a $50 million profit right there.
Plus commissions, retail rents, office rents.
Yeah, he mentions another $10 million as sales agent commissions. It became much more than just another good deal. He even moved into the top 3 floors himself. It really cemented his image, his brand on that skyline, his ultimate calling card.
Okay, so from Manhattan's heights, we shift gears. Gaming, Atlantic City, legal fights, Chapter 8.
Right, venturing into gaming, a whole new arena. He talks about strategically buying up parcels on the boardwalk. Saw the huge potential because licenses were so limited.
Calculated risk again, recognizing scarcity, potential for a regulated monopoly.
Yeah.
But that licensing process in New Jersey, notoriously tough.
Oh, yeah. Long, very difficult, very unpredictable, he calls it. He uses the Playboy Hefner example, denied a license partly due to old allegations, but also Hefner's demeanor and style.
Walking into the hearing with a pipe, silk suit, blonde, bombshell. Maybe not the best look for regulators.
Probably not. Highlights how subjective it could be, how important optics were.
So how did he navigate it?
Direct negotiation with the Attorney General. Basically said he'd walk if it dragged on too long. Got a commitment for a 6 months timeline, way faster than usual.
Assertive again, forcing the timeline, and proactive planning, too.
Yeah, gave regulators detailed plans way in advance. Let them review, ask for changes before construction started. Avoided those costly mid-build changes others got hit with. Smart efficiency, anticipating hurdles.
And the structure of his own organization helped, being non-bureaucratic.
Big advantage, he says. Direct access to him for decisions. Much quicker than big public companies with layers of management. Crucial in that fast-moving, complex regulatory world. Which leads right into Chapter 9. The Hilton battle.
Windfall. The battle for Hilton. High drama. Starts with Hilton's own licensing problem.
Right, they got denied. Baron Hilton's testimony wasn't great. They delayed firing that lawyer, Sidney Korshak, with alleged mob ties.
Korshak wrote that nasty letter back too, right? Accusing Baron of making him look shady only when he needed the license.
Exactly. Plus, not enough top Hilton execs showed up for hearings. Bad optics all around.
So Hilton's denied. Trump makes a condolence call to Baron Hilton.
Which subtly turns into realizing Hilton might sell their half-finished casino. But then Steve Wynn jumps in. Hostile bid for Hilton.
And Wynn's style clashed with Baron Hilton's. Wynn the smooth talker, but tries too hard. Hilton the aristocrat who didn't try hard enough.
That's how the book frames it. This clash created an opening for Trump.
To be the white knight. Wynn's aggression made Hilton more receptive to him.
So he makes the huge gamble. Matches Hilton's $320 million investment in the place. Says there was no time to be cute, no room to be tough. Biggest gamble yet. Unlike the Holiday Inn deal where they finance it all, this was all his personal risk.
And getting that $320 million loan, incredibly fast.
Yeah, an amazingly short conversation with John Terrell at Manufacturers Hanover Trust. Secured in a week. Speaks volumes about his track record and the bank's confidence by then.
Gets the deal done. Rapid turnaround 6 weeks to get it ready. Hires 1,500 people. Names it Trump's Castle after a fight with Caesars over Trump Palace.
And then, almost immediately, moves to replace the bank loan with a bond issue. Gets rid of his personal liability, even if the interest rate is higher.
That was speculative, right? The castle had no track record. His organization hadn't run a casino before.
Totally speculative. But Bear Stearns raised $300 million. High-yield bonds. And he notes the buyers did very well. Shows that financial engineering, again, shedding personal risk.
Yeah.
Constant theme.
Definitely. Okay, Chapter 10. Back to New York. Low rent, high stakes, the showdown on Central Park South, rent control battles.
Yeah, he gets into the downsides of rent control, argues it leads landlords to abandoned buildings, and often helps wealthy tenants the most. Cites Mia Farrow, Carly Simon, paying way below market for amazing apartments.
And he breaks down the tenants in the building he bought. 100 Central Park South. 3 groups.
Right. Wealthy folks in big Parkview places, like the designer Arnold Scassi, paying tiny rents. Then yuppies in smaller Parkview spots, affluent but not millionaires. And finally, modest income folks in court-facing apartments, paying below market, but not the crazy low rates of the rich ones.
Highlights the weird incentives where the wealthiest benefit most sometimes. The tenant leader, John Moore.
From a rich family, but found purpose fighting him, protecting his own valuable low-rent apartment. So Trump buys 2 buildings, Barbizon Plaza and 100 Central Park South, wants to tear down 100 CPS for a new tower. Immediate tenant opposition.
But then the market timing worked for him, strangely.
Yeah, the market dipped, 81-83, delaying him. But then it roared back, 84-85. So while the tenants stalled him, the property value nearly doubled. Obstacle became an advantage through patience.
And he adapted his architectural style, too. Moved away from sleek glass.
Towards more classical postmodern elements. Not his personal taste, he admits, but purely market-driven. If an older look is what people want, that's what I'm going to provide, he says. Pragmatic.
Like buying the St. Moritz Hotel. Got financing for $6 million more than the price. Basically, bought it for nothing up front, made instant profit.
Pure financial gamesmanship. Monetizing the asset before really owning it.
And the harassment suit the tenants filed, he refused to settle.
Refused $10 million. Said they were using harassment charges as a lever to buy the building cheap. Courts sided with him mostly, eventually dropped evictions, offered new leases, tenants paid back rent. Unwillingness to be, as he saw it, blackmailed.
And he blames the city, specifically Mayor Ed Koch, for pursuing the case anyway. Thinks it was personal.
Yeah, a vendetta from the Trump Tower tax fight and Woolman Rink. Sees politics as often personal, driven by grudges, which kind of sets up Chapter 11, the USFL.
Long shot, the spring and fall of the USFL, totally different world from real estate.
Definitely. Buys the New Jersey Generals for under $6 million. Calls it a lark, a long shot, a challenge to the NFL's smug monopoly. Right. Buying the South Bronx instead of Fifth Avenue, he says, outside his comfort zone.
Saw the NFL as vulnerable after a player's strike. USFL's problems were obvious. Playing in spring, no TV money, fewer fans, needed top players.
He knew the history. Successful AFL signed stars, forced a merger, failed WFL, lacked money, talent, TV, understood the strategy needed.
So he saw 2 outcomes. If they moved to fall, got good teams.
Either a big fall TV contract proving they were legit, or strong grounds for an antitrust suit against the NFL, force a showdown. He was open about this, not some secret plan.
Urged other owners, moved to fall, signed big names, but his single key miscalculation
Was the strength of my fellow owners. Many preferred staying small, avoiding a fight, undermined the whole strategy.
So he focused on his team, the generals. Signed Herschel Walker, who set a rushing record, signed QB Brian Sepe, then Doug Flutie for over $1 million a year, personally guaranteed. Saw Flutie as a Joe Namath type, star power. Traded Sepe to make room.
NFL definitely got worried. At Harvard Business School seminar, the USFL versus the NFL, outlining total war strategies against them, that confirmed it for him, validated his approach.
So when networks refused fall TV contracts, they sued. Antitrust suit, $1.32 billion.
Trial time. He praises the USFL lawyer, Harvey Meyerson. Says he beat up the NFL, dissected Commissioner Pete Rozell's testimony. Rozell looked bad, claimed ignorance of the Harvard plan. Meyerson used old contradictory testimony against him, too.
And Trump's own testimony contradicted Rozell about their meeting. Rozell said Trump wanted an NFL team. Trump said Rozell offered him one to stop the USFL moving to fall or suing.
But here's the twist. He reflects that maybe the USFL seemed too strong, Meyerson too aggressive, while the NFL looked weak, Rozell sick, their lawyer unwell, maybe generated jury sympathy for the NFL. Plus, NFL had better PR.
Perception again, even in court. So they won the antitrust finding, but got $1 in damages.
A hollow victory. Toothless. One juror misunderstood instructions. Legal win, practical loss. USFL suspended operations appealed. Still ongoing at the time of writing.
But even in that loss, he benefited. Players like Walker, Kelly, Flutie went to the NFL.
And because he'd guaranteed their contracts, he often made money when they signed those big NFL deals. Turned league deceit into personal financial gain somehow.
Wow. Okay, Chapter 12, Woolman Rink. Back to New York, public versus private efficiency. A clear win for him.
Definitely framed as a triumph. The city's 6-year, $13 million mess trying to fix the Central Park ice rink. Constantly failing, restarting. Contrast that with Trump Tower, built in 2.5 years. Symbol of public incompetence.
He got fed up. Offered to do it for free, got rejected by the parks commissioner. Then Mayor Koch mocked his offer publicly.
And it backfired spectacularly. Koch leaked the dismissive letter, thought Trump would slink away. Instead, the press jumped on it, saw a boondoggle. A great story.
Editorials blasted Koch. Trump has an ice plan. Public outrage forced Koch's hand. Shows the power of the press as leverage.
So the deal was, Trump puts up $3 million, city reimburses if it works, he covers overruns. Actually a worse deal for the city than his first offer, he notes, but proved his commitment.
And he delivered. Finished in 4 months, 2 months ahead of his own schedule. $750,000 under budget.
How? Used a reliable brine system? Not the city's field Freon one. Hired a top Canadian rink builder, his trusted contractor HRH at cost. City, meanwhile, hired fridge specialists with no rink experience whose report was due after he was supposed to finish.
Unbelievable. Highlights the lack of leadership, accountability he saw, watching idle workers, seeing the guy responsible for the failure get promoted.
Right. He stresses his own constant oversight, daily site visits as key. Stark contrast.
Rink was a huge success, made $500,000 for charity first year. City always lost money.
Huh?
500,000 skaters used it, tangible public good.
But he laments the city didn't learn anything. Politicians just care about avoiding bad press, not real efficiency. Argues they could use objective standards, hire good contractors, hold people accountable, but lack the force of will. A pretty harsh critique.
Yeah, sounds exasperated. Okay, Chapter 13, The West Side Story, a strategic comeback.
This one he calls the easiest business decision ever. Rebuying the West Side Yard's 78 riverfront acres in 85. He'd let his option lapse years earlier, 79, when the market was bad and he lacks resources.
Got it back cheap during a bank foreclosure? Paid less than the 1979 option price, even though Manhattan real estate had quintupled. Calls it the single best undeveloped piece of property in America. Saw value where others saw trouble.
Points out the previous owner, Franco Macra's mistakes. Costly giveaways like a huge smokestack for Con Ed he didn't even price out. Agreed to low-density zoning. Lack of due diligence, negotiation skill. Left value on the table for Trump.
And that anecdote about tearing up Macri's non-binding letter against his lawyer's advice.
Believe it built goodwill. Ensured Macri came back to him when ready to sell. Calculated generosity, maybe. Paid off, he thinks, his own vision. Fewer, taller buildings for views, big retail promenade, hold out for better zoning.
And the leverage for zoning this time, NBC.
Brilliant move. Found out NBC was looking to relocate, maybe even leave NY for Jersey. He offered them the West Side Yards, keep 4,000 jobs, $500 million revenue in the city. Add Glamour.
Framed his private development as a public service, used a corporate relocation threat as a lever, could offer NBC way more space than they had at Rockefeller Center. Creative deal-making, connecting unrelated pieces.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final chapter in this section, Chapter 14, reflecting on outcomes, the deal's legacy, a wrap-up.
Right, summarizing how things turned out. The casino stock plays first. Bally.
Made over $20 million profit there, accumulated almost 10% stake. Bally used poison pill defenses to stop a takeover, even bought the Golden Nugget partly to thwart him.
Which he says put him in a win-win, boosting all casino values. Bally eventually bought back his shares at a high price, forced a profitable exit without taking control. Also mentions a friendly bid for resorts, backing out of Australia.
Then the USFL. Still appealing the $1 verdict at the time, but highlights how players like Walker, Kelly, Flutie succeeded in the NFL, often benefiting him financially because of those guaranteed contracts. Personal gain from league failure. Again.
Woolman Rink. Clear success. Recaps. $750K under budget, opened a month early, made $500 for charity, 500,000 skaters. Huge pride point.
Also mentions the Atlantic City parking garage. That scary crane collapsed during construction. Huge crane toppled, section collapsed. Sheer luck, no one was hurt. Workers were on coffee break. Shows the risks.
But it got finished on time, on budget. Doubled slot revenues for Trump Plaza by bringing in foot traffic. Resilience.
So what's next, chapter heading asks. His answer.
Intriguing. Says he doesn't know if I did, that would take half the fun out of it. Sees the first 20 years as building, accomplishing, the next challenge, figuring out creative ways to give back some of what I've gotten.
And not just money. Using his skills overcoming obstacles and motivating good people in service of others. Hints at broader, maybe public, ambition.
Maybe, but he quickly adds, don't misunderstand. He'll still keep making deals, big deals, and right around the clock. The game is the constant. The fun is the challenge, not just stacking up wealth.
So, wrapping this section up for you, our listener, what's the pattern here in these first 14 chapters? It seems to be this blend of aggressive ambition, but also strategic patience. Huge emphasis on leverage, calculated risk, understanding public perception, manipulating it sometimes, and that relentless drive to deliver the goods, even against obstacles.
Yeah, it's about always chasing the next challenge. The satisfaction seems to come from the process, the game itself, with money maybe just being the way you keep score. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Yeah. About how you define success, what motivates your own goals, business, career, personal projects. So, based on just these initial chapters, here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on. What might it mean for any leader, really, to apply these kinds of deal-making principles, the relentless negotiation, the leverage, managing public opinion, to challenges beyond just business or real estate? What kinds of unexpected outcomes, good or bad, might that produce for everyone involved?
Something to definitely think about. Until next time, keep digging deeper.